Hello, welcome to Heavy D Storytelling. How are you doing today? My dad will be reading the Bible for you guys here. And then my brother in the back here will be doing the joke of the day. Then Kim's going to be doing the synopsis. Over there. In her room. After she sends the links, yeah. Then I'm also going to be in the joke of the day with Daniel. Then we are going to be reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea with my dad here, Heavy D.
Howdy. Hi. So, my name is David, and I'm going to tell a story today. Oh, we have one person on. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me find the... You know what? I pulled it up, but I didn't copy it. There we go. Copy, and here we are. All right, so there's the link for the Bible for tonight. We've got Genesis 45 coming. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers, and he wept aloud, so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me. Because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, and your flocks and your herds and all that you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see. That is my mouth that speaks to you. That it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt and of all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck, and he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. After that his brothers talked with him. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, "Joseph's brothers have come," it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat of the land." And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, "Do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." The sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave a change of clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of clothes. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provision for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, "Do not quarrel on the way." So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob, and they told him, "Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt." And his heart became numb, for he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived, and Israel said, "Is it enough? Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." And Genesis chapter 46 is taking forever to load. I'm going to see how long it is since that one was really short, but it's not loading. So we'll stop there for right now. Nope, here it comes. Waiting. Okay, yeah, this one's short too, so we'll go ahead and go on. Genesis 46. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, "Jacob, Jacob." And he said, "Here I am." Then he said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt. I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt. And I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes." Then Jacob set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel carried Jacob their father, their little ones, and their wives in the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They also took their livestock and their goods which they had gained in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters. All his offspring he brought with him to Egypt. Now these are the names of the descendants of Israel who came into Egypt: Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanach, Palu, Hezron, and Camri. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Puva, Yab, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jalil. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, together with the daughter of Dinah. All together his sons and daughters numbered 33. The sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Ezbon, Eri, Erodai, and Ereli. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, Beriah, with Shera their sister, and the sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to Leah his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 16 persons. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, the priest of On, bore to him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jazil, Guni, Jezer, and Shilem. These are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel his daughter, and these she bore to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All persons belonging to Jacob who came into Egypt, who were his own descendants, not including Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all, and the son of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2. All the persons in the household of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him in Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. Then Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father in Goshen, he presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, 'My brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come to me, and the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all that they have.' When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you will say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians." And that's where we'll leave it at the end of Genesis chapter 46. So tomorrow we will pick up with Genesis chapter 47. And now it is time for the wonderful joke of the day. We're still waiting.
More to the right. Okay, this is location.
You have to speak toward the camera so that they can hear.
Doctor, I'm losing memory.
When did this happen?
I don't remember.
No, it's when did what happen?
You.
Okay, so I did notice that there's one person. Rebecca said, "Hey guys."
Hey, Becca.
Yay! Hey Becca, we're so happy to see you tonight. And here comes Kimberly with the synopsis.
Right before that. I'm not in those pigtails.
They're ugly.
That is not true. Go ahead.
So what happened in the last chapter was I forgot his name again. Yeah, Ned Land. So he came up with an idea to get off of the Nautilus, and so he got everybody in on it, and things have not gone according to plan because Ned, he was a bit late with his signal, and Captain Nemo is talking to he's talking with I keep forgetting names, sorry. I'm gonna have to like write them down sometime. Yeah, Mr. Aronnax. So Captain Nemo's talking with him, and he's showing him about how he gets a bunch of like treasures and stuff from a shipwreck that like had a ton, like several tons of gold on it, right?
Yep.
So, and they got into a minor argument, and that's about it.
Okay, so you missed a couple sections. First of all, when they were going to skip the ship, the first thing that happened, they were in this boiling water. And they decided no, because they was gonna boil them to death or something, and they found out that it was like a volcanic water, like an underwater volcano or something was causing the water to heat up, something like that. And then after they got out of that, they were going to skip the ship, and because they were near Europe, so they're like, well, we're close to Europe, so we can just go home if we get on shore. And what happened was brain dead. So they were going to skip the ship, and they got caught in this slipstream that they were going really, really fast underwater. And basically, I mean, to go back to the Star Trek analogy, basically they got caught in a wormhole that was in underneath the Mediterranean, in the undercurrent of the Mediterranean, was pushing them out. They found themselves in the Atlantic really quickly, and then that's when they came across the ship that was it was like a big something or other treasure ship that had sunk. Okay, so chapter 9 is a vanished continent. The next morning, the 19th of February, I saw the Canadian enter my room. I expected this visit. He looked very disappointed. "Well, sir," said he. "Well, Ned, fortune was against us yesterday. Yes, that captain must needs stop exactly at the hour we intended leaving this vessel." "Yes, Ned, he had business at his banker's." "His banker's? Or rather his banking house, by what I mean the ocean, where his riches are safer than the chests of the state." I then related to the Canadian the incidents of the preceding night, hoping to bring him back to the idea of not abandoning the captain, but my recital had no other result than an energetically expressed regret from Ned that he had not been able to take a walk on the battlefield of Vigo on his own account. "However," said he, "all is not ended. It is only a blow of the harpoon lost. Another time we must succeed, and tonight if necessary." "In what direction is the Nautilus going?" I asked. "I don't know," replied Ned. "Well, at noon we shall see the point." The Canadian returned to Consul. As soon as I was dressed, I went into the salon. The compass was not reassuring. The course of the Nautilus was south-southwest. We were turning our backs on Europe. I waited with some impatience till the ship's place was pricked on the chart. At about 11:30, the reservoirs were emptied and our vessel rose to the surface of the ocean. I rushed toward the platform. Ned Land had preceded me. No more land in sight. Nothing but an immense sea. Some sails on the horizon, doubtless those going to San Roque in search of favorable wind for doubling the Cape of Good Hope. The weather was cloudy. A gale of wind was preparing. Ned raved and tried to pierce the cloudy horizon. He still hoped that behind all that fog stretched the land he so longed for. At noon, the sun showed itself for an instant. The second profited by this brightness to take its height. Then, the sea becoming more billowy, we descended, and the panel closed. An hour after, upon consulting the chart, I saw the position of the Nautilus was marked at 16 degrees 17 minutes longitude and 33 degrees 22 minutes latitude, at 150 leagues from the nearest coast. There was no means of flight, and I leave you to imagine the rage of the Canadian when I informed him of our situation. For myself, I was not particularly sorry. I felt lightened of the load from which had oppressed me, and was able to return with some degree of calmness to my accustomed work. That night, about 11 o'clock, I received a most unexpected visit from Captain Nemo. He asked me very graciously if I felt fatigued from my watch of the preceding night. I answered in the negative. "Then, Monsieur Aronnax, I propose a curious excursion." "Propose, Captain?" "You have hitherto only visited the submarine depths by daylight, under the brightness of the sun. Would it suit you to see them in the darkness of night?" "Most willingly. I warn you, the way will be tiring. We shall have far to walk and must climb a mountain. The roads are not well kept." "What you say, Captain, only heightens my curiosity. I am ready to follow you." "Come then, sir. We will put on our diving dresses." Arrived at the robing room, I saw that neither of my companions nor any of the ship's crew were to follow us on this excursion. Captain Nemo had not even proposed my taking with me either Ned or Counsel. In a few moments we had put on our diving dresses. They placed on our backs the reservoirs, abundantly filled with air, but no electric lamps were prepared. I called the captain's attention to the fact. "They will be useless," he replied. I thought I had not heard aright, but I could not repeat my observation, for the captain's head had already disappeared in its metal case. I finished harnessing myself. I felt them put an iron-pointed stick into my hand, and some minutes later, after going through the usual form, we set foot on the bottom of the Atlantic at a depth of 150 fathoms. Midnight was near. The waters were profoundly dark, but Captain Nemo pointed out in the distance a reddish spot, a sort of large light shining brilliantly about 2 miles from the Nautilus. What this fire might be, what could feed it, why and how it lit up the liquid mass, I could not say. In any case, it did light our way, vaguely it is true, but I soon accustomed myself to the peculiar darkness, and I understood, under such circumstances, the uselessness of the Ruhmkorff apparatus. As we advanced, I heard a kind of pattering above my head. The noise redoubling, sometimes producing a continual shower. I soon understood the cause. It was rain falling violently and crisping the surface of the waves. Instinctively, the thought flashed across my mind that I should be wet through by the water. In the midst of the water, I could not help laughing at the odd idea. But indeed, in the thick diving dress, the liquid element is no longer felt, and one only seems to be in an atmosphere somewhat denser than the terrestrial atmosphere, nothing more. After half an hour's walk on the soil became stony. Medusae, microscopic crustacea, and penetules lit it slightly with their phosphorescent gleam. I caught a glimpse of pieces of stone covered with millions of zoophytes and masses of seaweed. My feet often slipped upon this sticky carpet of seaweed, and without my iron-tipped stick I should have fallen more than once. In turning around, I could still see the whitish lantern of the Nautilus beginning to pale in the distance, but the rosy light which guided us increased and lit up the horizon. The presence of this fire under water puzzled me in the highest degree. Was I going toward a natural phenomenon as yet unknown to the servants of the earth? Or even, for this thought crossed my brain, had the hand of man aught to do with its conflagration? Had he fanned this flame? Was I to meet in the depths companions and friends of Captain Nemo, whom he was going to visit, and who, like him, led this strange existence? Should I find down there a whole colony of exiles who, weary of the miseries of this earth, had sought and found independence in the deep ocean? All these foolish and unreasonable ideas pursued me, and in this condition of mind, overexcited by the succession of wonders continually passing before my eyes, I should not have been surprised to meet at the bottom of the sea one of the submarine towns of which Captain Nemo dreamed. Our road grew lighter and lighter. The white glimmer came in rays from the summit of a mountain about 800 feet high, but what I saw was simply a reflection developed by the clearness of the waters. The source of this inexplicable light was a fire on the opposite side of the mountain. In the midst of this stony maze, furrowing at the bottom of the Atlantic, Captain Nemo advanced without hesitation. He knew this dreary road. Doubtless he had often traveled over it and could not lose himself. I followed him with unshaken confidence. He seemed to me like a genie of the sea, and he walked before me. I could not help admiring his stature, which was outlined on black on the luminous horizon. It was 1 in the morning when we arrived at the first slopes of the mountain, but to gain access to them we must venture through the difficult path of the vast copse. Yes, a copse of dead trees without leaves, without sap, trees petrified by the action of the water, and here and there overtopped by gigantic pines. It was like a coal pit, still standing, holding by the roots to the broken soil, and whose branches, like fine black paper, cuttings shone distinctly on the watery ceiling. Picture to yourself a forest in the hearts hanging to the sides of the mountains, but the forest swallowed up. The paths were encumbered with seaweed and fucus, between which groveled a whole world of crustacea. I went along, climbing the rocks, striding over extended trunks, breaking the sea, bindweed which hung from one tree to another, and frightening the fishes which flew from branch to branch. Pressing onward, I felt no fatigue. I followed my guide, who was never tired. What a spectacle! How can I express it? How paint the aspect of those woods and rocks in this medium? Their underparts dark and wild, the upper colored with red tints by light, by that light which the reflected powers of the waters redoubled. We climbed rocks which fell directly after which, with gigantic bounds and the low growling of an avalanche. To right and left ran long, dark galleries where sight was lost. Here opened vast glades which the hand of man seemed to have worked, and sometimes asked myself if some inhabitant of these submarine regions would not suddenly appear to me. But Captain Nemo was still mounting. I could not stay behind. I followed boldly. My stick gave me good help. A false step would have been dangerous on the narrow passes sloping down to the sides of the gulfs, but I walked with firm step without feeling any giddiness. Now I jumped a crevice, the depth of which would have made me hesitate had it been among the glaciers on the land. Now I ventured on the unsteady trunk of a tree, thrown across from one abyss to the other without looking under my feet, having only eyes to admire the wild sights of this region. There, monumental rocks, leaning on the regularly cut bases, seemed to defy all laws of equilibrium. From between their stony knees, trees sprang like a jet under heavy pressure and upheld others which upheld them. Natural towers, large scarps cut perpendicularly like a curtain inclined at an angle which the laws of gravitation could never have tolerated in terrestrial regions. There, monumental rocks leaning on their regularly cut bases seemed to defy all laws of equilibrium. From between their stony knees, trees sprang like a jet under heavy pressure and upheld others which upheld them. Natural towers, large scarps cut perpendicularly like a curtain. I read that, right? Like a curtain inclined at an angle with logic. Okay. 2 hours after quitting the Nautilus, we had crossed the lines of the trees, and 100 feet above our heads rose the top of the mountains, which cast a shadow on the brilliant irradiation of the opposite slope. Some petrified shrubs ran fantastically here and there. Fishes got up under our feet like birds in the long grass. The massive rocks were rent with impenetrable fractures, deep grottos and unfathomable holes at the bottom of which formidable creatures might be heard moving. My blood curdled when I saw enormous antennae blocking my road, or some frightful claw closing with a noise in the shadow of some cavity. Millions of luminous spots shone brightly in the midst of the darkness. They were the eyes of the giant crustacea crouched in their holes, giant lobsters setting themselves up like halberdiers. That's men who hold halberds. And moving their claws with the clicking sounds of pincers. Titanic crabs pointed like a gun on its carriage, and frightful-looking pulps interweaving their tentacles like a living nest of serpents. We had now arrived on the first platform, where other surprises awaited me. Before us lay some picturesque ruins, which betrayed the hand of man and not that of the Creator. There were vast heaps of stone, amongst which might be traced the vague and shadowy forms of castles and temples, clothed with the word of blossoming zoophytes, and over which, instead of ivy, seaweed, and fucus, threw a thick vegetable mantle. But what was this portion of the globe which had been swallowed by cataclysms? Who had placed these rocks and stones like cromlechs of prehistoric times? Where was I? Whither had Captain Nemo's fancy hurried me? I would fain have asked him, not being able to. I stopped him. I seized his arm, but, shaking his head and pointing to the highest point of the mountain, he seemed to say, come along, come higher. I followed, and in a few moments I had climbed to the top, which for a circle of 10 yards commanded the whole mass of rock. I looked down the side we had just climbed. The mountain did not rise more than 700 or 800 feet above the level of the plain, but on the opposite side it commanded from twice the height of the depths of this part of the Atlantic. My eyes ranged far over the large space lit by violent fulguration. In fact, the mountain was a volcano. At 50 feet above the peak, in the midst of the rain of stones and scoriae, a large crater was vomiting forth torrents of lava, which fell in a cascade of fire into the bosom of the liquid mass. This volcano, lit the lower plain like an immense torch, even to the extreme limits of the horizon. I said that the submarine crater threw up lava but no flames. Flames require the oxygen of the air to feed upon and cannot be developed underwater, but streams of lava, having in themselves the principle of their incandescence, can attain a white heat, fight vigorously against the liquid element, and turn it to vapor by contact. Rapid currents bearing all these gases in diffusion and torrents of lava slid to the bottom of the mountain like an eruption of Vesuvius on another Terra del Greco. There indeed, under my eyes, ruined, destroyed, lay a town, its roofs open to the sky, its temples fallen, its arches dislocated, its columns lying on the ground, from which one would still recognize the massive character of Tuscan architecture. Further on, some remains of a gigantic aqueduct. Here, the high base of an acropolis with the floating outline of a Parthenon. There, traces of a quay, as if an ancient port had formerly abutted on the borders of the ocean and disappeared with its merchant vessels and its war galleys. Farther on, again, long lines of sunken walls and broad deserted ships, a perfect Pompeii escaped beneath the waters. Such was the sight that Captain Nemo brought before my eyes. Where was I? Where was I? I must know at any cost. I tried to speak, but Captain Nemo stopped me by a gesture, and picking up a piece of chalkstone, advanced to a rock of black basalt and traced the one word, Atlantis. What a light shot through my mind. Atlantis! The Atlantis of Plato, the continent denied by Origen and Humboldt, who placed its disappearance among the legendary tales. I had it there now before my eyes, bearing upon it the unexceptionable testimony of its catastrophe. The region thus engulfed was beyond Europe, Asia, and Libya, beyond the columns of Hercules, where those powerful people, the Atlantides, lived, against whom the first wars of ancient Greeks were waged. Thus, led by the strangest destiny, I was treading underfoot the mountains of this continent, touching with my hand those ruins 1,000 generations old and contemporary with the geological epochs. I was walking on the very spot where the contemporaries of the first man had walked. Whilst I was trying to fix in my mind every detail of this grand landscape, Captain Nemo remained motionless, as if petrified in mute ecstasy, leaning on a mossy stone. Was he dreaming of those generations long since disappeared? Was he asking them the secret of human destiny? Was it here this strange man came to steep himself in historical recollections and live again this ancient life, he who wanted no modern one? What would I not have given to know his thoughts, to share them, to understand them? We remained for an hour at this place, contemplating the vast plains under the brightness of the lava, which was sometimes wonderfully intense. Rapid tremblings ran along the mountain, caused by internal bubblings. Deep noise distinctly transmitted through the liquid medium were echoed with majestic grandeur. At this moment the moon appeared through the mass of waters and threw her pale rays on the buried continent. It was but a gleam, but what an indescribable effect! The captain rose, cast one last look on the immense plain, and then bade me follow him. We descended the mountain rapidly, and the mineral forest once passed, I saw the lantern of the Nautilus shining like a star. The captain walked straight to it, and we got on board as the first rays of light whitened the surface of the ocean. Chapter 10. The Submarine Coal Mines. The next day, the 20th of February, I awoke very late. The fatigues of the previous night had prolonged my sleep until 11 o'clock. I dressed quickly and hastened to find the course the Nautilus was taking. The instruments showed it to be still towards the south with a speed of 20 miles an hour at a depth of 50 fathoms. The species of fishes here did not differ much from those already noticed. There were rays of giant size, 5 yards long, and endowed with great muscular strength, which enabled them to shoot above the waves. Sharks of many kinds amongst others, one 15 feet long, with triangular sharp teeth, and whose transparency rendered it almost invisible in the water. Amongst bony fish, Consul noticed some about 3 yards long, armed at the upper jaw with a piercing sword, other bright-colored creatures, known in the time of Aristotle by the name of the sea dragon, which are dangerous to capture on account of the spikes on their back. About 4 o'clock, the soil, generally composed of a thick mud mixed with petrified wood, changed by degrees, and it became more stony and seemed strewn with conglomerate and pieces of basalt, with a sprinkling of lava. I thought that a mountainous region was succeeding the long plains, and accordingly, after a few evolutions of the Nautilus, I saw the southerly horizon blocked by a high wall which seemed to close all exit. Its summit evidently passed the level of the ocean. It must be a continent, or at least an island, one of the Canaries or of the Cape Verde Islands. The bearings not yet taken, perhaps designated. I was ignorant of our exact position. In any case, such a wall deemed to me to mark the limits of that Atlantis of which we had in reality passed over only the smallest part. Much longer should I have remained at the window, admiring the beauties of the sea and the sky, but the panels closed. At this moment the Nautilus arrived at the side of this high, perpendicular wall. What it would do I could not guess. I returned to my room. It no longer moved. I laid myself down with the full intention of waking after a few hours of sleep, but it was 8 o'clock the next day when I entered the salon. I looked at the manometer. It told me that the Nautilus was floating on the surface of the ocean. Besides, I heard footsteps on the platform. I went to the panel. It was open, but instead of broad daylight as I expected, I was surrounded by profound darkness. Where are we? Was I mistaken? Was it still night? No, not a star was shining, and night had not that utter darkness. I knew not what to think when a voice near me said, "Is that you, Professor?" "Ah, Captain," I answered. "Where are we?" "Underground, sir." "Underground?" I exclaimed. "And the Nautilus floating still?" "It always floats." "But I do not understand." "Wait a few minutes. Our lantern will be lit, and if you like light places, you will be satisfied." I stood on the platform and waited. The darkness was so complete that I could not even see Captain Nemo, but looking to the zenith exactly above my head, I seemed to catch an undecided gleam, a kind of twilight filling a circular hole. At this instant the lantern was lit, and its vividness dispelled the faint light. I closed my dazzled eyes for an instant and then looked again. The Nautilus was stationary, floating near a mountain which formed a sort of quay. The lake then supporting it was a lake imprisoned by a circle of walls measuring 2 miles in diameter and 6 in circumference. Its level, the manometer showed, could only be the same as the outside level, for there must necessarily be a communication between the lake and the sea. The high portions, leaning forward on their base, grew into a vaulted roof bearing the shape of an immense funnel turned upside down, the height being about 500 or 600 yards. At the summit was a circular orifice by which I had caught the slight gleam of light, evidently daylight. "Where are we?" I asked. in the very heart of an extinct volcano, the interior of which has been invaded by the sea after some great convulsion of the earth. Whilst you were sleeping, Professor, the Nautilus penetrated to this lagoon by the natural canal which opens about 10 yards beneath the surface of the ocean. This is its harbor of refuge, a sure, commodious, and mysterious one, sheltered from all gales. Show me, if you can, on the coast of any of your continents or islands, a road which can give you such perfect refuge from all storms. Excuse me. Certainly, I replied. You are in safety here, Captain Nemo. Who could reach you in the heart of a volcano? But did I not see an opening at its summit? Yes, its crater, formerly filled with lava, vapor, and flames, and which now gives entrance to the life-giving air we breathe. But what is this volcanic mountain? It belongs to one of the numerous islands with which the sea is strewn, to vessels a simple sandbank, to us an immense cavern. Chance led me to discover it, and chance served me well. But what use is this refuge, Captain? The Nautilus wants no port. No, sir, but it wants electricity to make it move, and the wherewithal to make the electricity, sodium to feed the elements, coal from which to get the sodium, and the coal mine to supply the coal. And exactly on this spot the sea covers entire forests embedded during the geological periods, now mineralized and transformed into coal. For me, they are an inexhaustible mine. Your men follow the trade of miners here, then, Captain? Exactly so. These mines extend under the waves like the mines of Newcastle. Here, in the diving dresses, pickaxe and shovel in hand, my men extract the coal, which I do not even ask from the mines of the earth. When I burn this combustible for the manufacture of sodium, the smoke escaping from our crater of the mountain gives it the appearance of a still active volcano. And we shall see your companions at work? No, not this time at least, for I am in a hurry to continue our submarine tour of the earth. So I shall content myself with drawing from the reserve of sodium I already possess. The time for loading is 1 day only, and we continue our voyage. So if you wish to go over the cavern and make the round of the lagoon, you must take advantage of today, Monsieur Aronnax. I thanked the captain and went to look for my companions, who had not yet left their cabin. I invited them to follow me without saying where we were. They mounted the platform. Consul, who was astonished at nothing, seemed to look upon it as quite natural that he should wake under a mountain after having fallen asleep under the waves. But Ned Land thought of nothing but finding whether the cavern had any exit. After breakfast, about 10 o'clock, we went down on to the mountain. Here we are once more on land, said Consul. I do not call this land, said the Canadian, and besides, we are not on it, but beneath it. Between the waves of the mountain and the waters of the lake lay a sandy shore which, at its greatest breadth, measured 500 feet. On this soil one might easily make the tour of the lake, but the base of the high partitions was stony ground, with volcanic locks and enormous pumice stones lying in the picturesque heaps. All these detached masses, covered with enamel, polished by the action of the subterraneous fires, shone resplendent by the light of our electric lantern. The mica dust from the shore, rising under our feet, flew like a cloud of sparks. The bottom now rose sensibly, and we soon arrived at long circuitous slopes or inclined planes which took us higher by degrees, but we were obliged to walk carefully among these conglomerates, bound by no cement, the feet slipping on the glassy crystal, feldspar, and quartz. The volcanic nature of this enormous excavation was confirmed on all sides, and I pointed it out to my companions. Picture to yourselves, said I, what this crater must have been when filled with boiling lava, and when the level of the incandescent liquid rose to the orifice of the mountain, as though melted at the top of a hot plate. I can picture it perfectly, said Consul. But, sir, will you tell me why the great architect has suspended operations and how it is that the furnace is replaced by the quiet waters of the lake? Most probably, Consul, because some convulsion beneath the ocean produced that very opening which has served as a passage for the Nautilus. Then the waters of the Atlantic rushed into the interior of the mountain. There must have been a terrible struggle between the two elements, a struggle which ended in the victory of Neptune. But many ages have run out since then, and the submerged volcano is now a peaceable grotto. Very well, replied Ned Land. I accept the explanation, sir, but in our own interests, I regret that the opening of which you speak was not made above the level of the sea. But, friend Ned, said Counsel, if the passage had not been under the sea, the Nautilus could not have gone through it. We continued descending. The steps became more and more perpendicular and narrow. Deep excavations which we were obliged to cross cut them here and there. Sloping masses had to be turned. We slid upon our knees and crawled along, but Consul's dexterity and the Canadian strength surmounted all obstacles. At the height of about 31 feet, the nature of the ground changed without becoming more practicable. To the conglomerate and the trachyte succeeded black basalt, the first to spread in layers of bubbles, the latter forming regular prisms, placed like a colonnade supporting the spring of the immense vault, and an admirable specimen of natural architecture. Between the blocks of basalt wound long streams of lava, long since grown cold, encrusted with bituminous rays, and in some places there were spread large carpets of sulfur. A more powerful light shone through the upper crater, shedding a vague glimmer over these volcanic depressions forever buried in the bosom of this extinguished mountain. But our upward march was soon stopped at a height of about 250 feet by impassable obstacles. There was a complete vaulted arch overhanging us, and our ascent was changed to a circular walk. At the last change, vegetable life began to struggle with the mineral. Some shrubs and even some trees grew from the fractures of the walls. I recognized some euphorbias with the caustic sugar coming from them. Heliotropes, quite incapable of justifying their name, sadly drooped the clusters of flowers. Both their color and perfume had gone. Here and there some chrysanthemums grew timidly at the foot of an aloe with long, sickly-looking leaves. But between the streams of lava I saw some little violets, still slightly perfumed, and I admit that I smelt them with delight. Perfume is the soul of the flower, and sea flowers have no soul. We had arrived at the foot of some sturdy dragon trees, which had pushed aside the rocks with their strong roots, when Ned Land exclaimed, "Ah, sir, a hive! A hive!" "A hive!" I replied, with a gesture of incredulity. "Yes, a hive," repeated the Canadian, "and bees humming around it." I approached and was bound to believe my eyes. There, at a hole bored into one of the dragon trees, was some 1,000 of these ingenious insects, so common in all the Canaries, and whose produce is so much esteemed. Naturally enough, the Canadian wished to gather the honey, and I could not well oppose his wish. A quantity of dry leaves mixed with sulfur he lit with a spark from his flint, and he began to smoke out the bees. The humming ceased by degrees, and the hive eventually yielded several pounds of the sweetest honey, with which Ned Land filled his haversack. "When I have mixed this honey with the paste of the breadfruit," said he, "I shall be able to offer you a succulent cake." "'Pon my word," said Consul, "it will be gingerbread." "Never mind the gingerbread," said I. "Let us continue our interesting walk." At every turn of the path we were following, the lake appeared in all its length and breadth. The lantern lit up the whole of its peaceable surface, which knew neither ripple nor wave. the Nautilus remained perfectly immovable. On the platform and on the mountain, the ship's crew were working like black shadows clearly carved against the luminous atmosphere. We were now going round the highest crest of the first layers of rock which upheld the roof. I then saw that bees were not the only representatives of the animal kingdom in the interior of this volcano. Birds of prey hovered here and there in the shadows or fled from the nests on tops of rocks. There were sparrow hawks with white breasts and kestrels, and down the slopes scampered with their long legs several fine fat bustards. I leave anyone to imagine the covetousness of the Canadian at the sight of this savory game, and whether he did not regret having no gun. But he did his best to replace the lead by stones, and after several fruitless attempts, he succeeded in wounding a magnificent bird, the lead, because it's the bullets. To say that he risked his life 20 times before reaching it is but the truth, but he managed so well that the creature joined the honey cakes in his bag. We were now obliged to descend toward the shore, hit the crest becoming impracticable. Above us, the crater seemed to gape like the mouth of a well. From this place, the sky could be clearly seen, and clouds dissipated by the west wind, leaving behind them, even on the summit of the mountain, their misty remnants, certain proof that they were only moderately high, for the volcano did not rise more than 800 feet above the level of the ocean. Half an hour after the Canadians' last exploit, we had regained the inner shore. Here the flora was represented by large carpets of marine crystal, a little umbelliferous plant, very good to pickle, which also bears the name of piercestone and sea fennel. Consul gathered some bundles of it. As to the fauna, it might be counted by thousands of crustacea of all sorts, lobsters, crabs, spider crabs, chameleon shrimp, and a large number of shells, rockfish, and limpets. 3/4 of an hour later, we had finished our circuitous walk and were on board. The crew had just finished loading the sodium, and the Nautilus could have left that instant, but Captain Nemo gave no order. Did he wish to wait until night and leave the submarine passage secretly? Perhaps so. Whatever it might be, the next day the Nautilus, having left its port, steered clear of all land and a few yards beneath the waves of the Atlantic. Chapter 11 is the Sargasso Sea, and we will have to continue that one on Sunday. Tomorrow I am working another 6 to midnight shift, so I will not be able to read tomorrow evening, but we will continue the adventures of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, or as I like to call it, 19th Century Star Trek, on Sunday. So if you have any comments, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I am so glad that you came to join us today. I'm starting to lose my voice. I don't know exactly what that is, but I apologize. And I hope that you're enjoying the story. I need to get my water back, which was taken from me. And good night, Rebecca. We love you too. So thank you for letting me know. So I assume that it's caught up. And we will see you again tomorrow when I get to read you another story. And good night. And